Welcome. This is a Savasana practice. Savasana is one of those postures that people really look forward to at the end of a yoga class, sort of the icing on the cake, so to speak, the reward for having endured different kinds of practices, different kinds of challenges, working within your body in different ways, whether that's intense or just really attuned. But sometimes Shavasana is a practice within itself that doesn't need a prequel. It doesn't need a bunch of other postures to be super effective. Sometimes it's exactly what we need and we don't need anything else. It's perfect, all on its own. It can also be a practice that can be done right after a pranayama practice. And so if you're looping some of these practices together, that's fantastic. It's really a great way to customize your own needs for how your body and mind are needing nourishment on a day-by-day basis. There's no one right way to do yoga. The best thing to do is to listen to the body and say, what do I need? Do I need to rest? Do I need to breathe? Do I need to move gently, assertively? What do I need? And so for Shavasana today, we're going to do a really clean and simple Shavasana. No props, really. And so you can do this pretty much anywhere that you can lie down on the floor, right? And so the important parts are make sure you're warm enough. So if that means that you need more clothes or a blanket on top of you, those are things that are fairly readily accessible. Socks are awesome. Keep the ends of the body warm, maybe even gloves. A greater sense of safety. And so to start and to finish, lie on your back. You'll have your legs lengthened onto the floor. Of course, if you need props for low back pain or to adjust something, there'll be other videos that can talk you through some of those things. It's my opinion that learning and achieving the ability to lie on the floor without props is actually a really important thing. To be comfortable in multiple positions, propless, fully propped. How do we allow our body to be super adaptable? And so as you lie down with your legs lengthened, allow them to be slightly wider than hip distance, maybe 2 feet apart, and floppy so that the legs kind of succumb to gravity. They'll probably turn out. And for this practice, we're going to have our hands on our belly. You can choose whether you want your hands at the navel, below the navel, above the navel. But oftentimes, having the hands placed on the body, A, requires a little bit less space. B is very grounding, right? There's a sense of self-touch that can be incredibly calming. And particularly if you're in a time of your life where there's a lot of stress, a lot of chaos, some uncertainty, this idea of self-touch can be almost as good as hugging somebody else. And so this practice today will have our hands on our bodies so that we can give ourselves a little extra support as we rest. So if you're choosing to close your eyes, go ahead and close them if they aren't already. If they're open, make sure that they're soft. Right? Shavasana is not a practice of finding visual balance. It's not a practice of focus. Shavasana is really about allowing the body a time to rest. And so if vision is needed for whatever reason, allow it to be wide and receptive rather than seeking. And then take a moment to tune into the symmetries or asymmetries in your own body. Start at your heels. Notice if you can feel if you're landing on the same aspect of your right heel as you are on the left heel, or if one leg turns out easier than another. There could be many reasons for that, some of which you might be able to adjust, some of which you might need a little bit of assistance for. So don't worry about it, but just take note. You might also notice if one side of your pelvis is meeting the ground with more weight than the other, one shoulder blade meeting the floor with more weight than the other. You might even notice if one of your hands is connecting with your body with more fullness than the other, right? Really landing tissue to tissue rather than having almost an energetic hovering, a holding pattern, so to speak. And finally, notice if you could sense the back of the skull, and if you're more on the right side or the left side. See if you can be right in the center so that the two halves of the brain are falling into the line of gravity symmetrically and not in a rotation. And then relax the jaw, relax the tongue. The lips should be slightly touching, the teeth should be separated so that the jaw is slack. And then begin to transition into a space where the mind is broadening, focus is being released, so that the body has an opportunity to simply rest. If you're someone who has a really hard time resting in silence, feel free to bring in a little bit of a meditative quality to your practice by focusing your attention on your breath. If you are able, see if you can let the mind wander so that not only are you letting go of as much bodily control as possible, right? Body being supported by the floor, but you're also releasing the brain and the mind and the consciousness of task. Right? How often is that the goal in your waking life? We're going to be here for another 8 to 10 minutes in order to allow the relaxation response to occur, which we can talk about at a later time. But know that it's at this 8-minute mark that there's a profound shift in the physiology, in how the body starts to relax. You'll hear a bell at the end, signaling the end of the practice, and then I'll talk you out of Savasana. Slowly bring your attention to your breath. Make small movements with your fingers and your toes, and perhaps rock your head from right to left. As an exhale arrives, bend your knees, step your feet to the floor, and roll to one side. On an exhale, press yourself up to a comfortable seat, bringing your hands into prayer or Anjali Mudra. Bow the face down towards the fingertips, act of gratitude for taking time to rest. May all beings be free. May all beings be safe. May all beings be healthy. Namaste.